Okay, happy Monday, everyone. You did a lot of work last week preparing for your final essay for Unit 1, and I just have a collection here of some of the work that you've done. Remember, last week we read and annotated the scholarship jacket. I want to thank Serenity for letting me borrow her copy. She did a good job. And as you read through it, you paused and thought. So you have your thoughts here as you go through the story. The reason why you need to have a copy of the story is so that you can refer to it if you need more evidence for your writing today, or if you just need to kind of review what happened in the story so that you can explain why you chose the evidence that you chose. So make sure you have your copy of the scholarship jacket. You should also have your copy of your essay your essay planning guide. And I want to thank Zion for letting me use hers. Remember, we went through the prompt, and I'm going to reread that prompt in a second. And we talked about what it is we need to put in the essay. So I'm going to go over that in just a second. So make sure you have your copy. Also, on the second page, this is where you found the evidence that you're going to use in your first paragraph. You should have highlighted or underlined 2 of them, and this is what Zion has chosen. And you also remember in part 3, that's where you brainstormed who it was, who in your life that has been an influence on you, who's taught you life lessons. And that's what you're going to write about in your second paragraph. So you've brainstormed that already as well. And finally, on the third page, and I don't know if you took a lot of time looking at this last week, but if you haven't, this is a really good, it's called an example essay, and how it should kind of fit together. Of course, this is not the same prompt that you're going to be writing on, but it's set up the same way, where you've got the first paragraph about, this happens to be Squeaky and Raymond's Run, but you're going to be writing about Marta and the scholarship jacket. And the second one is a personal paragraph that you're going to write, where the author of this story talked about an important person that helped them change and grow. So it's set up the same way, and I want you to really pay attention to how the paragraphs flow, okay, how they transition. So it starts with a claim, and we're going to do this together, and notice the quotation marks are showing where the evidence has been included, and then there's lots of explanation. That's what I really like about this example essay. And then it transitions, we're going to work on that also, into the second paragraph. So use that as a guide. If you're stuck, read it. Go back and look at it. If you're not sure how to put in a piece of evidence, look how this student did it in her essay. And there was just a little bit more where you're reflecting on that. And here are the tips for using that example essay when you're writing yours. So this is what we did last week. It was great prep work for what we're going to be doing today. And today we're going to be putting your ideas into this organizer, and I want you to notice that the front side of this organizer is going to be about the scholarship jacket. This is going to be your paragraph about the scholarship jacket, and on the back side, this is going to be your second paragraph about your personal story, someone in your life who has taught you a valuable lesson, just like Marta and her grandfather. So I want to make sure you have everything ready to go. You're going to need a pencil today. I'm going to be using a green pen. Pause your video if you need to get anything, and we'll get started. Okay, so go ahead and put your name on your organizer before you do anything else, because I'm going to keep these and give them back to you tomorrow. And the first thing we need to do at the beginning of the paragraph is to state our claim. Remember, your claim is your opinion, and another word for it is your argument that you're going to prove to be true using the evidence and reasoning. Okay, we call that the CER paragraph: claim, evidence, reasoning. And so let's talk about this claim first. So you want to start this paragraph. If we go back to the prompt, remember the 3 things we have to do. We have to write a paragraph about how Marta learned a lesson about dignity, okay? And I told you that I would give you the claim. You could borrow this. So what I always recommend you do when we have a prompt is go back to the question. they're asking you to write about an important lesson, and they even mention dignity in the prompt. So we're going to use that to make our claim, our statement. Always go back to the prompt when you're making your claim to make sure you're answering the question directly. I'll tell you again, if you're not answering this question, even though your essay is a beautiful essay, you'll be off topic and you won't receive a score on SC Ready. That's why it's really important to know exactly what the question is asking. So we're going to use that to start our claim. So I would suggest making just a general statement about Marta from the scholarship jacket. I would say Marta, your main character, and we're going to use a little non-essential phrase here. So we're going to put a comma from the quote, capital S, scholarship, capital J. This is the title of a story, end quote, and then put a comma inside the quotes, okay, because that's going to be our non-essential element of the sentence. We're going to put quote little commas around it. Learned and just an, not and, important lesson about, let me move this up for you, about dignity from her grandfather. So this whole paragraph is going to be about the lesson that she learned about dignity from her grandfather. And I want to pay attention to this word dignity. That's one of your vocabulary words for Unit 1. That's to feel a sense of self-worth, self-respect, to take care of yourself and to have that pride in yourself. It kind of means a lot of different things. And so go ahead and make sure that you have your claim written down in your organizer. Don't forget the little things like the commas and the quotation marks, the period, capitalize the title of the short story and Marta's name. And then come back to talk about the evidence with me. Okay, so this is where we're gonna kind of go in different directions because there are multiple pieces of evidence that you had to choose from. So go to your essay planning guide and find the two pieces of evidence that you chose to use in your paragraph. And Serenity, is this Serenity? No, this is Zion. Zion chose the third and the fourth example. So I'm just going to use one of hers as an example because I think it's a good one. They're all actually very good. So I'm going to use the first one since that's the first one she's highlighted. And don't forget, you want to start it with the speech tag. You don't just want to throw the quote in without introducing the quote. So you could say something like, looks like this is her grandfather speaking here. I'm just going to start with grandfather says. You want to use the present tense when you're talking about characters from stories. That's just a rule when you're writing about literature. Now we're going to put a comma before his quote. Don't forget your comma. Start your quote. And this is a fairly long quote, so I'm just going to write it all down. He said, "Then if you pay for it, Marta, it's not a scholarship jacket, is it?" Question mark. Then he says, "Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. And write out the word, F-I-F-T-E-E-N. That's the way it was written in the story. you should always write out numbers under 100 in word form when you're writing, like if you're writing for ELA or something for school. So numbers under 100 have to be in words. That's just another rule about writing. Period, end quote. All right, so we've got our claim. We have a piece of evidence. Now we need to explain why that evidence supports the claim. So he's talking to Marta about the scholarship jacket, and he's basically saying, I'm just going to say, grandfather is basically telling Marta you shouldn't have to pay for an, I'll put award, because the jacket is an award, if you have earned it. That's my original thinking. This is why I chose that quote. Grandfather is basically telling Marta you shouldn't have to pay for an award if you have earned it. So he's teaching her this lesson about you've earned it, you deserve it, and you should feel proud of that, whether you pay for it or not. And that ties back to that idea of dignity, that pride. And I probably would add that also in my paragraph. I ran out of room here, but it's really good really to have 2 reasoning sentences for each piece of evidence. But if you have 1 for this first essay, I'll take 1, okay? So what I want you to do is you can use this if you want to as an example, but I want you to do the second one on your own. So you're going to go back to your evidence that you found in your organizer. So this is Zion. So Zion would go back to the second piece of evidence, and she's going to put it here with a little speech tag, introduce the quote, and then she's going to explain why this also supports her claim up at the top, okay? So pause the video, and I want you to make sure you have everything filled out for the first paragraph, and then we'll come back and we'll work on the second paragraph. Okay, the second paragraph, this is going to be a little different because you don't have text evidence to include. Your evidence, since you're talking about yourself and your own life, are going to be the details from your memory or from the lesson that your person, whoever it was, teacher, coach, parent, taught you, that life lesson. So we do need to start again with another claim, and I want you to think about how we can begin this. So it has to be about someone in your life that has taught you a lesson, but we want to kind of transition into this. We want to smooth out our paragraph. So remember in the example essay, right here, it says good transition. Let me move that up a little bit. Good transition to your second body paragraph. This is organized well. And I'm going to underline this. It says, like Squeaky, I've transformed because of an important person in my life, Coach Henderson. Now remember, this is a different prompt. They're talking about transformation. We're talking about like a life lesson. And if you can think of one about dignity, that would even be better. But it's okay if your lesson's not about dignity. But I like this, like Squeaky. That's a good transition. So what I want you to do is use that in your claim. Okay, that's a nice transition. It connects the paragraphs. So we're going to say, like Marta, because we have a different story, comma. Okay, like Marta, I have learned a valuable, you could put important if you want to, life lesson from, and then I'm not going to be able to finish this. You're going to put whoever that person is here. It could be your mom, your dad, your coach, like I said. So you put whoever that person is here. And then I want you to give me some evidence. What was the lesson? Okay? How did it what I would say is, what was going on in your life, what happened, and then explain how that event was a lesson that you learned. So here I want you to tell the event, like what was happening. Were you at a game? Were you at school? What was going on? Tell us the little story, and it could be more than one sentence. So I want you to tell me the event and what happened. That's going to be your evidence. Here, and you don't need to write that down. You put it in your own words. This is just a little direction here. In this sentence, I want you to explain what you learned. This is your reasoning. What's the lesson? Okay. And then I want you to tell me a little bit more about the story. So you're just going to repeat it but give more detail in the second evidence box. And then continue to tell how this lesson impacted you. Explain how the lesson, how did you change? I'll put how the lesson changed you. So that's just to give you a little help, a little direction when you're putting together this second paragraph. You got your claim. Now I want you to tell me what was going on in your life, what happened, how was this person involved, and explain what you learned, what was the lesson, and then tell a little bit more about the story, the person, what was going on, and then explain how the lesson changed you. Because when you learn a lesson, you change a little bit in some way, like Marta did in this story. She became much more assured of herself when she went back to the principal after she learned that lesson from her grandfather. So take some time, think through these 4 sentences and what you're going to put in there. Add them to your organizer, and when you're done, I want you to raise your hand or find me. I want to see what you've come up with and give you some feedback, and then you can go back to Google Classroom to find out what you're supposed to do next.